This video was late to the party, but nevertheless, I'm here. This is the semi-long awaited review video for the 32-bit Zoom H1essential recorder. It's total nerdy stuff, and it's coming right up. So, good day and welcome to the Time Preservation Society. I am once again John McLean. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that bell notification so you can be notified of new content right when it drops. Cheers. So the reason it took me so long to review the H1essential recorder is its own story. But in a nutshell, I have spent more than a year constantly emailing Zoom to get them to send me products for review. I've sent over 20 emails so far and only one time received a reply, which they said they were forwarding my email to marketing and that someone would be in touch with me soon. No one ever was. It's like they're just ignoring me or something. I want answers. But having the staff at Zoom get back to me, just some guy on the internet, is neither here nor there. It matters not. The product matters. So I bit the bullet and I purchased the H1essential. So here it is right here. What can I say about Zoom? Well, not much is known about this mysterious company. Some say the executives and engineers are recluses, that they live high up on a Tibetan mountain and issue designs for new gear by way of carrier pigeons. Others say that there are no humans there at all, and that sometime in the 80s, AI took full control and are replicating themselves and the gear en masse a la Skynet. Me? I'm not much for conspiracy theories myself, except for that I'm the only person to exist and that you all are digital holograms. But other than that, all I know is that the original H1 recorder was first released by either robot or human back in 2010, which was Inception and Unstoppable ago. They followed that up with their H1n release in 2018, which was Avengers Infinity War and Ready Player One ago. And now they've entered the future with the all-new 32-bit H1essential recorder released in 2024, which was Dune Part 2 and Argyle ago. That's a lot of agos. So let's have a look at it and see how it compares to its older siblings. This is going to be a brief overview of the recorder and not a deep dive into the menu system and how to work it, because the manual is 126 pages long, so that should indicate why I am not doing a deep dive. So let's look at it. So right off the hop, you can see the physical changes they've made to the H1. The original H1 was a charcoal color, then the H1n went to jet black, and the Essential is a bit of a lighter black or a darker charcoal, so somewhere in between. The cage around the XY mics has been removed. I'm not sure what the cage ever actually did, so I won't miss that. Right away, you can see the mic gain dial is gone again, but this time not replaced with any controls whatsoever. It's meant to never need to adjust gain. This might be problematic since we have yet to find out how bad the preamps are. On the other two H1s, keeping the gain under 5.5 ensured you would have less noise. If you dialed the gain higher than that, it could introduce a lot more preamp noise, but we will soon find that out. The clicky buttons on the H1n have been removed in favor of quieter, soft rubber or silicone buttons. This would be a very welcome upgrade if the plastic body wasn't made out of the loudest plastic ever created on Earth. I mean, seriously, why the quiet buttons when you can't even breathe on the friggin' body without creating rumble? It doesn't make sense. I digress. The blue soft buttons control a few things. From left to right, we have the stereo and mono button, which does precisely what it says it does. But that switch also becomes a back button when in the menu and can control whatever it indicates on the OLED display based on the screen you're currently on, if that made any sense whatsoever. Next, we have the low cut button, which removes the low end from the recordings. There are 3 options: 80 Hz, 160 Hz, and 240 Hz. This is very useful when recording where there is even a slight breeze. But there's always a slight breeze with the H1 recorders. It's a rumble magnet. I never use the low cuts on recorders myself. I generally like to do that in post when I need to. The low cut button also becomes other buttons based on the screen you're currently in. Then we have the marker button, which sets markers when you're recording for you to easily find what you were recording when you marked it on playback when you're playing right on the device. You can add up to 99 markers per recording, and then during playback, you can skip to the next marker for easily finding what you marked. The marker button will also become a button that controls whatever is on the screen at the time as well. And finally, the delete button, which does what it says it does. It also doubles as an enter key and other functions depending on what's on the screen at the time. Then below, we've got your standard record button surrounded by stop, play, pause, skip back, and skip forward buttons. On the left side, you've got your 3.5mm headphones output, and which is also a line level out as well, you should know. A volume controller dial, which will control the loudness of either your headphones or your line out, as well as other functions depending on what you choose in the menu. Next, we have the standard slide and hold to power on/off switch. This can also be slid to hold mode, which disables all the buttons so you don't accidentally screw up a recording when you're wearing a wire while covertly recording people and are, carrying the recorder in your pocket with your keys. On the other side, we have the 3.5mm line in port, which can be used to plug a lav mic or a stereo set of lav mics into. It provides plug-in power for lavs, so you're all set with that. Below that is the updated USB-C port. Now, this is a welcome change. The original H1 had a mini USB connection, and then the H1N had a micro USB connection. It's nice to see that they finally added the more universal USB-C connection. You can connect the H1essential to your computer or device using the USB-C port and stream your audio directly in. When you're connected to a device, the recorder will draw power from the device instead of its own batteries. Very cool, and the same as the other ones. So for drop rigs, you could plug in a USB-C power bank and leave it recording for days. And yes, days. Because one of the biggest improvements over the last 2 versions is the SD card size. You can now use micro SD-XC cards up to a maximum of 1 terabyte. That means that you can record in 32 bits, 48 kilohertz for up to 400 hours, which is about 16 and a half days. That's a massive upgrade from the 32 gigs allowed on the previous models. But you can't just use any SD card to get that size of storage. A regular micro SD card still maxes out just at 32 gigs, so you must have a micro SD-XC card. I went with the Samsung Evo 256 gig card. This gives me 100 hours of recording at 32 bits and 48 kilohertz, so everything I'll ever need. It's important to note that the H1essential can only record in 32-bit float. Unlike its predecessors, you cannot switch between its 24, 16, whatever. It's 32-bit only. And finally, on the back, we've got your speaker for playback. It still sounds like a Fisher-Price toy, but whatever. And then this was another welcome upgrade. The 1/4-inch threads for mounting the recorder are finally made of metal. Gone are the delicate plastic threads that so many people broke by over-tightening. Good on you, Zoom, if that is your real name. And finally, the battery compartment. They're hanging in there with the dual AAA batteries. I'd hoped they'd went back to the single AA battery, but alas, my hopes and dreams proved to be too lofty. You can use alkaline or rechargeable lithium or NiCad batteries, or just make sure that you tell the device which you're using for optimal powering operation. It'll ask you when you first turn it on. The screen has been updated as well. It's no longer the backlit digital readout. Instead, they went with OLED. And I think it looks very nice, but be warned, it looks nothing like the photos. The photos make it look high res. It's not. It's still low res looking. In real life, it's underwhelming. You want it to be crisp and clear like in the pictures when you go to their website, but it's not. Still cool. With the battery in, the original H1 weighed 94 grams. The H1N weighed 91 grams. And the H1essential decided to go back up to 94 grams. The menu system is pretty easy to navigate, in my opinion. And I'm a middle-aged man. I don't know if that counts for anything, but there it is. There is another new feature that can be switched on or off, and that is voice guidance. This is to aid visually impaired people. It announces which buttons you're pressing. This is a great upgrade if you have trouble seeing but still want to record sounds. But the voice guidance quickly got very annoying, so I shut it off immediately. You can download voice guidance languages other than English, of course, like Spanish, French, Japanese, German, Italian, or Chinese. The menu system is pretty standard. There's not much new in here. There's actually less options than the H1N if you factor in that it can no longer record in 16 or 24 bits, or the insanely crappy MP3. So for example, there's no limiter, obviously, since it records only in 32 bits and there are not many sounds in existence that can clip the recorder. Loud sounds can still clip the mics themselves, but not the recorder, not the digital recording. If you're new to 32-bit recording or don't know what it is, here's the clearest explanation ever delivered by mankind. The units of measurement of loudness is decibels, dB for short. The difference between a quiet sound and a very loud sound is called dynamic range. The gain dial on recorders or interfaces increases the sensitivity of the recording much the same way as ISO increases light for photography. Too high and it starts to create noise. It also limits the dynamic range the higher you go, and the lower you go, you begin to lose sounds like light, no information, or information buried in noise. 16-bit recording has a maximum dynamic range of 96.3 decibels before it gets all distorted and terrible sounding. That means lawnmowers, hairdryers, and blenders will digitally distort your recording even if you have the gain set to the lowest level, since all of those sounds are louder than the digital file can contain and thus record, just like overexposed images. There is no saving those files. When they digitally distort or clip, that's baked in forever. 24-bit recording has a maximum dynamic range of 144.5 decibels. That means gunshots, fireworks, and explosions could digitally distort your recording even if you have the gain set to the lowest level. But in life, we wouldn't walk around with our recorders set to the lowest level, would we? We would have them set to the medium average level for what we're recording. So if you wanted to record, say, some people having a conversation and then loud noises happen and your gain is already set to 5, your dynamic range is even smaller and your recordings will clip unrecoverably. Is that even a word? I think it is. I feel like it is. It is. So 16 bits has a maximum dynamic range of 96.3 decibels. 24 bits has a maximum dynamic range of 144.5 decibels. So 32-bit recording has a mind-blowing maximum dynamic range of 1,528 decibels. For perspective, the loudest sound ever recorded on Earth was on August 27th, 1883, when Krakatoa erupted in Indonesia. That event was measured at 310 decibels. At that level, or at any level past 194 decibels, it's not even considered a sound anymore. It's a shockwave. It literally took out half the island with sound alone. So, in theory, you could have been recording that with killer low-sensitivity microphones in 32 bits and still have 1,218 decibels to play with before you clipped or distorted. So you will never, ever digitally clip with 32 bits. It's impossible. but it is possible to clip the mics themselves, and that's your bottleneck. The mics on the H1essential have a maximum sound pressure level of 120 decibels on paper. So 32 bits is great to record in when you're not 100% sure of the level of sounds that you will be recording. For example, an air show. Get both the crowd and the jets at the same time, right? Because, massive unlimited dynamic range. Another feature this has is the ability to normalize a recording right on the device. So in case you don't know, this means that the device will take the 32-bit audio recording and then automatically raise or lower the gain so that the loudest sounds stay under 0. It still spits it out as 32-bit file, but you have the option to export that file as either a 16 or 24-bit file without destroying the original 32-bit recording. That saves both versions. The same with normalizing it. It makes a second copy, all inside the device itself. I think this will help a lot of people. It measures... Oh, hold on a sec. Let me find... Oh, there it is. Trusty old measuring tape here. This measuring tape was found by an adventurer named Rick O'Connell in 1926 when he was exploring the lost city of Hamunaptra in Egypt. I picked it up in Cairo back in '99. Anyway, it measures about 5.5 inches long, 1.5 inches wide, and 1 inch deep. Okay, so what you've all been waiting for. How does it sound? This sound right now is the Octava MK012. I wasn't going to record with this because, I just never would do that. So, I don't know. I thought of doing it, and then I said no. I said, did I record the H1N review when I did that review? Did I record it with that? And I looked and I didn't. And they're the same reasons, right? So I took the H1essential for a test. I recorded just random stuff that I could find. Here are those recordings. Here is me creating a huge dynamic range to test the 32 bits, but rendering it down to 24 bits for this video. Let's make a right turn. Right over here! It seems I've come to a stop sign! Yeah. All right. Let's hang a Roger at the wicked fat kid. I gotta think of some other ways to test the dynamic range! Here is the noise when recording quiet sounds and then normalizing it in post. So how's the noise sounding? Let's hear it. Here is the exact same recording of quiet sounds, but on the H1N and normalized in post. So how's the noise sounding? Let's hear it. How about the overdub function? All right, let's try to record something with overdub. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. And now the song is stuck in your head. A nightmare not a stream. And now the song is stuck in your head. A nightmare not a stream. And now the song is stuck in your head. A nightmare not a stream. And now the song is stuck in your head. A nightmare not a dream. So how about let's just record me just regular, and let's hear the difference, right? So let's hit record, and we are recording. All right, so here is the sound of the H1essentials. My headphones are listening to this microphone, so I am not hearing what this is recording right now. So this is that sound. That's one side, and that's the other side. So this is that sound. And this is what it looks like. Yeah. So notice what happens as I handle it. And you can really hear those. I have a fountain for the cats, and it's running, making all kinds of noise. I really should have turned that off. So if you're hearing all that swishing and water, that's what it is. It's not more studio water. So yeah, this is the sound. And doesn't matter how loud I get, it won't clip. So in post, I would have dropped that down a little bit. And yeah, so that's the sound. And that's the handling noise. It's not good. Okay, let's move on. So what do you think of that handling noise? Okay, so now for the price. Just like the H1N, you can now own this right now for about $100 US dollars. So for what it does, it is a good price. So my conclusions: it's a cheap recorder and it sounds cheap, but that doesn't mean it's not usable. The original H1 and the H1N both also sounded cheap. It's the mics. They're literally plastic. The 32-bit recording is definitely a flashy selling point, but it's kind of a one-trick pony. It's kind of a gimmick. The highest sample rate you can go is 96 kilohertz, as I said, which is the same as the H1N. I'd have loved for them to increase that to 192 for better use in sound design. The preamps are, I think, the exact same preamps. I mean, I kind of expected that. I went on their website when I heard about this, and if they had updated their preamps in any way, they would have said it. But they didn't. They didn't say anything about that. So my assumption was it's the same. They're the same. So very noisy. Still, 32 bits means you don't ever have to worry about clipping or setting levels. You can just do it all in post. I do think there's value in normalizing right on the recorder. I'd probably never use that, but many people might find that to be, very useful. You'd still need to draw in your gain in post and, for mixtures of loud and quiet, right? You would gain up and gain down and, draw your lines. But you'll also have to deal with the noise levels raising and lowering too. So if you're dealing with quiet sounds and you're trying to draw in, bring up and down your faders, automate it, well, you're going to hear noise going up and down as well, which isn't cool. It starts up in 8 seconds, which is an improvement of 2 seconds from the H1N, because that one took 10 seconds fully. So for this one, it took 10 seconds from the time you press start, like you powered it on, and the new one is 8 seconds. So that's not bad, all right? That's not bad. The OLED screen is a nice touch. It still seems cheap looking in real life, but I do like that improvement. I love the metal 1/4-inch threads here, so that's nice. Some people think that the H in the H1 stands for handheld, but I think it actually stands for handy, and I agree with that. This is a handy recorder, but it's not a handheld one. The plastic body is so terribly noisy to handle, as you heard. You absolutely cannot handhold it. Even the pressures of your finger on it creates massive sound. Just holding it does. So yes, handy, not handheld. It's got all your usual features of the H1N, like auto record, overdub, and pre-record, plus a few more like voice guidance, timer, and up to a terabyte of recording space, which is cool. At the time of this video, the H1essential comes with firmware 1.04 installed, but version 1.1 has just been released, and I updated it immediately. The new firmware only offers a few bug fixes like battery display and voice guidance pronunciation. Did they listen to all the suggestions and the complaints from the H1 users? No, not really. I feel like this was a boardroom decision and not an engineer's decision. You know what I mean? It's kind of a cash grab and capitalizing on the new 32-bit craze. Sure, they finally put metal threads in the mount there. That's great. But the handling noise is still super bad. I'd rather myself pay $50 more and have some type of heavy silicone coating or even a denser plastic or something like that. Literally, I would pay $100 more if I had this and it had a little bit better preamps and better handling noise. I'd also rather have the option of 32-bit recording. Also having 24. I don't care about 16, but 24 or 32-bit would be great. I have a couple of high-end recorders here that record in 32 bits. Do you know how much I use the 32-bit mode? I don't even use it. But it's nice to know it's there and to have the option. That's not to say that you yourself won't find 32 bits useful. You might. But for what I do, I would just rather have manual control and make good informed decisions when I'm actually recording. It saves a lot of post work. So for me, 32 bits was more of a gimmick. Ooh, 32 bits, I want to have that. And then I just never used it. It's one of those things you try out a couple times and you're like, yeah, whatever. And honestly, if you're editing your own stuff, that's a lot more time editing 32-bit than you might think, if you do a lot of editing. But I mean, it's a lot more time if you edit your stuff, your own stuff. If you record a lot and you're recording 32-bit, and then you have to take it into post and then set all the gains and set everything in post, that's a lot of work. Most of the time, you just want to set it right the first time when you're recording, and then when you go into post, you just, normalize it or do whatever you do. But otherwise, it's a lot of editing if you do this a lot. But, it's $100. It's still the best pocket recorder in this price range. If you know a better one for $100, let me know and I'll test it out, because so far the Zoom H1 still king of the cheap-ass recorders. Also, as I said earlier, the manual is 126 pages, but it doesn't come with the device. I couldn't even find a URL to download it, by Googling it. In any of the literature that comes with it, there was no link, nothing that I could see. So I had to look for it myself, right on Zoom's site. I had to navigate there myself. So for your convenience, and if you do have an H1 Essentials and are looking for a manual, I put a link to the PDF of the H1 Essentials manual in the description below, so check it out. So here are my recommendations. If you have troubles with vision, this is the recorder to get. If you're going to be recording a huge dynamic range or don't know what to expect and you can only spend no more than $100, then this is the recorder to get. If you have a pair of lav mics terminated in a 3.5mm stereo plug like the Clippies, like the stereo pair of Clippies, and you're looking for a cheap drop rig to leave somewhere where you aren't sure how loud it can get, then this is the recorder to get. I always recommend using a pair of external mics with this recorder. The onboard mics are not the greatest. They'll work, but they're not the greatest. But if you already have an H1 or an H1N and you're thinking about upgrading, unless you're dying for 32-bit recording and you know you'll actually use it, then I don't recommend upgrading at all. It's the exact same recorder as the H1N. Same sound, same mics, same preamps, same handling noise, just with 32-bit recording, metal threading, and a voice guidance system that I promise you will turn off after about 1 minute of it, unless you're visually impaired. Then you'll probably want to keep it on. If you've never experienced 32-bit recording and you absolutely must, then I don't think there's a cheaper way to experience it than this one. If I'm wrong, let me know. I have not yet heard of a cheaper one that gets you in the door for 32 bits. I would probably recommend the Zoom F3 if you got an extra $250 to spend. The preamps are much better on the F3. Plus, it has XLR inputs and phantom power. So, if you're going to invest in something and you want it to be 32-bit, but you want to grow with it a bit, then I would say save your money and get the Zoom F3, the F standing for field recorder. But what do I know? I'm just some guy. So, all the positives and negatives said, I will reiterate what I said in my H1N review and even the H5 review. You can do anything with anything. You do not need a $1,500 Sound Devices recorder to make great recordings. You do not need the $1,000 Sony D100 to make great recordings. As I said a year ago, the original 14-year-old Zoom H1 was used to capture sounds that were in Hollywood movies. Literally, they were in H1 sounds you hear all the time in movies still. You don't need the latest and greatest incarnation of a recorder to make your craft better. Okay, they're all just toys and bells and whistles. Come on. As long as it's dependable, it does what you want it to do, and you know the gear well, you're set. So yes, you can buy the H1 Essentials and be confident that it's at least not worse than its predecessors. But honestly, I think Zoom could have done much better than they did here. They left too many possibilities on the table, and I feel like it was a quick cash grab. That's my feeling. Maybe they intend to introduce the H1 Pro sometime soon. Incorporate the F-Series preamps into the H1 Pro. I don't know. Rubberize the body. Include better mics. Have the option of 16, 24, or 32 bits. And maybe from 44.1 to 192 kilohertz sample rates. Maybe protect the body from wind. Upgrades, pro stuff. Maybe one day they'll listen. But obviously not to me. They'll first need to answer my emails. Welcome to the party, pal. Bye now. In transmission. And watch those other videos. Thank you. These ones, and hit this button to subscribe in the center where yes, this one. Thanks for sticking with me, guys. See you later.